And welcome to Timeline. It's Saturday, June 23rd, 2018, just after 3 p.m. out here in Bend, Oregon, where I'm coming to you live from, and my froze up here a little bit. There you go. I'm coming to you live out here in the shadow of the Cascades. A beautiful scene out there in the background with those snow-covered peaks, and I get to wake up to that every morning. But I'm your host, Randy Rogers, and for those of you who don't know me, and even those that do, I'm going to bring you all onto the same page here and give you a little background information on who I am, what this show is about, and even why I chose today as the day that I'm going to launch it. So to start off with, I've been a photographer all my life. I've had a camera in my hand from a very young age. There's a picture of me back in the 50s with my dad's Speed Graphic, and I was fascinated with photography, everything about it. He taught me everything, how to develop the pictures and print them, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I read every book on it, the subject that he'd give me. And so on my 10th birthday, right before my 10th birthday, I asked my mom if she would cash in some of the green stamps that she had collected from the stores and the gas stations that used to hand them out. And you'd collect them in these books, and then you'd get these green stamp catalogs. And I had been looking through one of them and saw this camera that I wanted. And I asked my mom if she'd get it for me. So on my 10th birthday, on that July 8th, 1963, she took me into this green stamp store, this very store here in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and got me that camera. And little did she know, or maybe she did, but I certainly didn't, that it was going to launch me on an incredible, incredible career. I could never have imagined how my life was going to turn out from having that one gift for my 10th birthday. I ended up becoming a television news photographer for, first I started at a newspaper in Johnstown, and during my senior year, and then I went on to the television station, WJAC TV. That's me in 1971 with a camera. I was out on a shoot. It was freezing cold. It was January. It was a robbery, and the camera started slowing down. I couldn't figure out what was happening. I opened it up, and all the film came popping out, and the newspaper photographer happened to capture a shot of it that day. So I spent 2 years in Johnstown working in the news business. Then I moved on out to Phoenix, where I spent 13 years in the news business for 2 different stations there, KPHO and KPNX TV. And things started transitioning into electronics. This was one of the first video cameras we got, an RCA TK76. And anyway, I worked out there for 13 years. And then in 1986, I got the call that I really wanted, and that was from NBC Nightly News calling me to come out and work in Los Angeles. And that was Tom Brokaw was the anchor at the time, and that's me covering the Voyager flight that went around the world back out in the Mojave Desert. So I worked on that for 20 years. I worked in that television news business. By the time the 90s rolled around, I wanted to get out of TV. It was starting to turn too tabloid for me. It wasn't the pure news business that I really had started out in. So I thought, well, if I'm going to make things up, I might as well go into Hollywood. And so I started working in the television and motion picture production. I was doing TV shows, director of photography on it, and I also moved into the motion pictures doing promotions behind the scenes. This is on the set of The Matrix. We had one of those big monster things that they went around in with the big guns on the side, and we had reset the whole set for them in Warner Brothers. We had huge crews. This was one of the crew on The Matrix. I mean, it was so much fun. We got to do all of Warner Brothers, and Disney was another huge client. There I am on the set of, we were down in Hawaii on Pearl Harbor. We had the aircraft carrier down there, and did the whole promotion for the movie Pearl Harbor on that aircraft carrier. And again, another huge crew with me. So I'm setting up the stage here of what my life was like, what I was doing 23 years ago on this very day, June 23rd, 1995. I was in the middle of all these kind of productions, and also I had just purchased I'd built a new house on the bluff overlooking Marina Del Rey. That's the house there. And I was moving into it on that day. I'd been moving in over several days, and I was up in the house in the back room. I had built this separate building in the back. You can see it here. It housed my production equipment. And then up in that little corner up in the left, you see the window of my office. And here's the interior of that office. I was up in that office that day unpacking, and looking out the window, and the sun was starting to set. So I kind of got fixated on this sunset. I'm standing there staring out that window at this beautiful sunset as the sun set down over Malibu and the mountains and the Pacific Ocean, and my mind just got lost in it. And the next thing I know, I had this incredible thought, that a friend of mine had passed away from grade school. Didn't know where the thought came from, how it was coming into me. All I knew was that something had happened to her, and I had to find out what was wrong with her. I mean, that's what the message I was getting through. I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So that started me. The newsman in me couldn't let go of it. So that started me on a year-long search for her without telling anyone. I didn't want anyone to think I was crazy, that I was hearing voices, but it really wasn't a voice. It was thoughts coming into me. So I started looking for her. Her name was Kathy Lynch. And when I did find her a year later, to make a long story short, she had passed away from ovarian cancer. And I was working on a video for the Fire and Ice Ball at that moment on ovarian cancer. And this thing started to happen that I realized was called synchronicity. There were too many coincidences happening. And I started to follow this synchronistic path. And I was trying, and I wouldn't let go of the story. Why was she reaching out to me? And so that led me to a Russian acupuncturist by the name of Lucy Postoloff. She put some needles in me, and that ended up just taking off into a crazy. What I couldn't even understand what was happening. All I knew was I was telling her these stories about who I was, who she was, how we were connected, and they all seemed very real to me. And at the end of it all, it ended 4 years later. It ended up becoming this book called The Key of Life: A Metaphysical Investigation, and as I started promoting the book, it was October of 2009. I'm out across the country doing book tours, and and everybody is wanting to experience this. And of course, they're not going to get out to LA and get Lucy to stick needles in them, but I knew that they used hypnosis to do this with. And so I started looking around, trying to figure out how I could learn how to be a hypnotist, or to learn to use this technique to show people what I had experienced. And I came across this guy here. This is picture Dick Sutphin in his book, You Were Born Again to Be Together, a million-seller book, a million plus, I'm sure. And he had written a book on the subject of reincarnation. In fact, he is the book on the subject of reincarnation. He has written 23 books to this date on the subject, and I sought him out, called my publicist, and she happened to be his publicist. And this is Sarah. She lives back in Virginia, and I'm thinking, how more synchronistic can this be? But today I have Dick here with me, and there he is coming in. Let me unmute your button here, Dick, so they can hear you. There you go. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. That's quite a story.
Oh, yeah.
And I learned some things too, so thank you for that.
Yeah, well, the whole synchronicity of connecting up with you changed my life. I've got to say that what I learned from you, there's only two things in my life that really I think about when I look back over my life that I was really glad that I took schooling for and instructions. And the one is learning to become a hypnotherapist through your classes, and the other one was my flying lessons when I learned to be a pilot. Those are the two things I look back on and go, that was money well spent, and it was fun. Do you remember the class we had there? Let me pull up a picture of them here.
Yeah.
This was the group that we were training in back in 2010. Dick there in the center, and all the other classmates. Some of them are connected up with me on Facebook right now, and we had a great time. And what we're going to get into a little later in the show is one of the sessions Dick called me up on here in that. When we were training, you brought me up to the class on that Thursday after we had gone through some of the basic instructions of it, and then you used me as a subject to hypnotize me, and that's what we're going to be playing today and diagnosing that so people can hear what it is actually like to have one of these sessions. But to start off now, I really want to ask you, how did you end up jumping into this, metaphysical pool of researching reincarnation? How did you, what got you into it?
Well, it's like, where do I jump in?
Right. But it was a long time ago. I mean, you've been doing this.
It was a very long time ago,
70s.
Randy.
Yeah.
Yes. And
you yourself had you had one of these sessions done on you, didn't you? Is that what triggered it?
Yes, I did. And then I was dating a girl who was a great subject, and when she went into the session with me, she was involved in a very complicated relationship, but she was in communication with her husband, who was living in LA, and so it became like a mystery between her roommate, her husband, and what she was going through with the husband. And I just wanted to find out more about what this was, how did it work. And there was a psychic in Scottsdale, Arizona. This all took place in Scottsdale. Mm-hmm. And so I decided she was right down the street from my office.
Right.
And so I went to her classes that she had on Wednesday night, I believe. And she told me all about not only what was happening with the girl I was dating, but what was happening in my life. She told me about a friend who was dying of lupus in the other part of the country. All sorts of strange things that time proved to be true. So as soon as the mystery would start to become solved, there was more to it. And so I was investigating all sorts of stories, and right.
There's always more to it. It never ends.
There's always more to it. Yeah.
Well, you were talking about the connection of all these people, and that's something that this all has to revolve around, is this soul family and karma. These are two things.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that, about what is a soul family and what is karma?
Karma, cause and effect.
Uh-huh.
As you sow, so shall you reap. And we could go into it a lot more than that, but that's it in a nutshell. It's a multi-life debit and credit system that is the basis of reality, Randy, as far as I'm concerned. And I think you probably imagine that's true too.
Right. Well, a lot of people think karma is something that happens to you, and it's really not. It's something that you're doing to yourself.
Right. Yes.
It's really a challenge that before you come into this life is that you're going to come in and there are these things that you want to experience, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, you have probably have a whole long list of karma that you'd like to get cleared up. Some of it is good, some of it's bad, chances are, but you want to get it all cleared up as best you can. And you start to meet people. You don't know that there are people that you have karma with, but when you meet them and when it becomes important, the relationship between them becomes important, well, you are probably now meeting them because of the karma, and you're in for a ride, is what it amounts to.
Right. Yeah, it's an incredible. I was just out with some friends last night, and the one guy's married to a Ukrainian Russian woman. This guy has a daughter who has a Russian name, and I could see the connection between these guys already set up. And his other guy's wife was Russian, and I said, "Did you all go to some Russian mail order place?" And no, that wasn't the case. It was just all these people came they came together, and there's some kind of Russian connection going on with it,
Yeah.
And I don't know what.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to do regressions with them to find out.
Exactly.
But it's fascinating when you get into it. I imagine you've heard some pretty interesting stories on the karmic level about people. Is there anything in particular that jumps out at you right now?
Well, I've not only heard about them, but I've lived them, because they are always, if you're working with a past life regression, it's a very intimate situation between you and your subject. So we have hundreds and hundreds of cases, and working on a book right now, and it's just new cases that my wife Roberta and I have worked on in the last about 8 years, and some of them are just amazing. Some of them are so unusual, I'd never had the same sort of experience. So even though they were really unusual, I've investigated them, and my wife's investigated them, and I totally believe that they're true.
Right.
So I don't think of one in particular right now, but
well,
I'm sure
it always takes this twist. I find that when I'm doing these regressions with people, and tell people out there that you do them, you don't have to always do them in person. You do them on Skype. You're doing them connected, because all you really have to do is have your voice connected with them and the music you're feeding down to them to get them under hypnosis. And talk to let's talk a little bit. People are a little probably confused about what hypnosis is. First of all, that they have misconceptions about that it's some kind of thing you're going to be in a trance. Talk a little about hypnosis and what it is.
Well, it's an altered state of consciousness, number one. I put them in, you put them in to a trance, and it sounds like more than, it's not something mystical. It's just something that we do, and it's very effective, and we count them down into a state of hypnosis, and then we guide them back. I mean, we are like a bus driver.
Yeah.
We're taking them back for really a trip.
Right.
And so as a result of that, we end up, they are beginning to see the regression like it was a movie in their mind.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be that way, but most of it is.
Right. Yeah, because people vary. There are some people who I found that the people that can't see it usually are trying to look with their eyes, and I'm going, you can't look with your eye. They're saying, I don't see anything. You're not supposed to see it. It's in your mind, and it becomes an image, and then you become part of that image. It starts out like a movie to me. When I'll give you a little background on me. When Dick did the regression with me, I don't know if you knew it, but I found out later, and I didn't even know the word, but you used that I'm a somnambulist. And I'm one of these people that go deep, deep, deep under. My voice changes. I get real soft, and I'm there. I'm in England. I'm over here. I'm somewhere else, and I can hear Dick. I know he's in the room. I know I'm talking to him, but I'm somewhere else telling him exactly what's happening in there. So some people, they struggle with that. People, how do you get them to loosen up? Is it the approach? Because we're going to listen to you doing this session with me, and you approach everything differently. Talk about how you size that up when you come into a situation.
Well, when you decide that you're going to work with someone, you're going to have a little time, Randy, that you are going to use to judge the person who's your subject. I always decide if I'm going to use a paternal or a maternal approach. Somebody that is in a position of responsibility will respond much easier if I'm just very gentle with them. In other words, a man that is maybe he is the owner of a company, he is not going to be want to be told what to do. And so if I'm telling him, I want you to do this or do that, why, isn't going to be near as effective as if I'm gentle. I use a more feminine approach.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first part. And boy, we end up with such a variety of tools in the way that we approach it. I imagine if you and I were to sit down and talk about that, or
Yeah.
we each hypnotized a different individual, we'd probably be both quite surprised at the technique that you were using, or
Right.
you'd do the same with me.
Well, yeah, and it's not a quick technique when we're doing this. I mean, I tell people it will take about 20 minutes sometimes to get under. We do a relaxation. You
Yep.
walk through the steps, a relaxation technique, and then a chakra opening and balancing, and then there's the when we work our way to the countdown. That's a huge thing where you're visualizing yourself descending things. How important is that? That
Yes.
descending. That's where they're really coming down. That's where they're starting to lower their resistance to everything in that countdown.
Yeah. That's an important part. That's a very important part.
Yeah.
So I still use the same techniques primarily that I used 30 years ago. So I've learned them pretty good.
Now, did you learn when you started to teach this? Did you learn it from someone, or were you just experimenting on your own? Because you were way at the beginning of this. I mean, you ended up writing all the books, and so to become the master, sometimes you're just out there on your own when you're experimenting around it.
I really was out there on my own. Yeah. I have to. I look back and I can say, the most hypnotists will say, I use his techniques or my
Right.
but I can't really say that I use somebody else's techniques, because they were techniques that I developed years ago, and I experimented and played with techniques and ended up with ones that worked the best. And
Right.
I probably haven't changed them in the last 10 years.
Right.
But boy, that's a long time.
For the listeners out there, talk about what are you accessing when you do go under hypnosis? What part? Because there's a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, and I know we're into the subconscious realm, and that causes a lot of confusion with people out there. They don't understand the subconscious mind part of it.
The subconscious mind is, it's hard to explain so that everybody will really understand what it is. But it's like seeing with your mind, and so you have to have your subject trust you in your guidance. And some people are great subjects. As a somnambulist, why, you are a fantastic subject, Randy. So you don't know what it's like for all the other people, but you're in that last 10-15% of people who are just natural at this. Maybe it's good karma. I don't know. Maybe it isn't. But
Well, it's not good if you're driving down the road late at night watching the lines
No.
on the road go by. You can be in a ditch in no time. I don't even like to drive at night anymore. I intentionally have to keep my focus off of things because it will do it to you.
Yeah.
And,
I know.
But it's fun when you get them in the session because they take off, and especially if they're talkative, they can tell the story. If you can tell a good story, and
yes.
But another thing I want to talk about the subconscious mind is you're not aware. Your conscious mind's not aware of it. We're in the conscious mind right now. You and I are talking, and we're focused on this. But I tell people, when you're driving down the car and you get somewhere and you don't remember the last 2 miles you drove there, who was driving the vehicle? And you snap to when you get there and you go, oh my God, and you feel like you were out of control. Your subconscious mind took over because your conscious mind started working on a problem. And you kind of let go and you get pulling into this place, and all of a sudden you're freaking out because your conscious mind is a control freak of your body. I tell people it's the thing that keeps you on. I got to pick up the dog at the groomers. I got to go pick up the laundry and then make supper for the kids. That's your conscious mind. But your subconscious mind's that one that when you're driving down the road and it just comes out of nowhere. Oh, I should stop and see Joe. And you shut it off. You go, oh, well, I'll do it another time. And Joe was subconsciously communicating with you at that time.
Thinking
incredible,
about you.
right?
Yeah.
Incredible stories about people that just, they didn't listen to that subconscious mind, and that person that was their last day on earth, literally those stories, and they found out and started. I was going to stop and I didn't, and so I'm always telling people use it to your advantage. Now, if it's telling you to rob a bank. Then maybe you want to rethink that. Yes. Hey, so I want to get into this session you did with us, did with me. Well, you were doing it in front of a group, and imagine we had the 10 people. There were 10 of us in the group, and I get up there, and I had never been hypnotized. I'd only done it with some acupuncture needles. So here I am with Dick, gonna hypnotize me here, and I've got some segments. We'll play a little clip, and then we'll come out and talk about it, and we'll play another clip. We'll go through it all. But listen to his voice on this as we go into it, and listen to his technique as he starts to get me under. Now, this is really speeded up. It's not the whole session. It's just a little bit towards the end of him putting me under hypnosis.
And in just a moment, I'm going to touch you in the forehead, and you will drop down deeper than you've ever been before. Far, far deeper than you have ever been before. Sleep. Deep, deep sleep. And so I'd like you to imagine the tunnel. See a tunnel right before your inner eyes. And you're going to move through the tunnel as I count backward from 5 to 1. Number 3, you're moving back now. Moving back, getting closer and closer and closer to the light at the end of the tunnel. Number 1. You are now there. And I'd like you to look around and tell me if you are outdoors or indoors. Do you sense being outdoors or indoors at this time?
I'm in a cabin.
And are others there with you, or are you alone?
No, I'm alone right now.
All right.
It's dark in the cabin. It's nighttime.
Is this your cabin, or is this a cabin that you've come upon?
I feel like I'm spending the night there for some reason.
Okay.
I can see a shelf and
all right.
A candle on it.
All right.
That's the only thing lighting the room.
All right. Well, let's move on forward until something happens during the night, and if nothing happens, on the count of 3, you will find yourself in the morning, and you can get up and you can move around and look out the windows So, moving forward in time just a little. Number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Yeah, and we're back. That what happens next? I was not ready for. I had no clue. I mean, I was just going with it. I was there in this cabin. It was dark. The lighting was this candle flickering. I couldn't hardly see anything. And Dick's voice just guiding you along. And you move. You can move people fast on this timeline. Talk about that. How fast you can move around. Oh, I lose it. Yeah. I lost your audio. Dick, I lost your audio. Hold on a second here. I've lost your audio, Dick. Let's see what happened here. Yeah, nothing on there. And I don't know what happened to it. It was working fine out of there. Let me see if I can fix this before we... It's not muted on this end. Something happened on your end? Well, I can continue playing these segments, and maybe you can see if something's not putting the audio out on your end. I don't know what happened there, but I'm definitely lost you. Yeah, it's nothing coming in, and I have it opened here. So let me go to the second segment here, and I'm going to play that, and I'll walk through these segments then until we see if I can get your audio back in.
I'm pulling on my boots.
Okay.
They're tall boots. They go up to my knees.
All right. Can you describe the rest of your attire? What are you wearing?
It's gray. It's a belt, a black belt,
Okay.
a sidearm,
Yes.
a sword I have. I've got a hat. I'm in the cavalry.
All right.
I have a horse.
Yes.
A horse is a beautiful horse. It's,
All right. And is your horse outside the cabin?
I call the horse Thunder.
Okay.
It's this large black horse.
All right. Well, let's move forward a little ways in time and see what you're doing. Moving forward.
It's an outpost of some kind.
All right.
I'm on an outpost.
All right. Well, describe when you go out of the cabin.
It's
Describe
very
what you see.
pine, top of a mountain.
Okay.
It's very... It feels like North Carolina or the mountains of the Carolinas.
All right. Good. Is there anyone outside the cabin? In other words, you have men who are stationed
There's
here
an
as well?
encampment all around. And
All right. And you're the main officer.
I'm
Okay.
an officer of the
Okay.
Confederate Army. It's
Good. All right. Now,
my
what are
name
you
is
going
Johnson.
to? Your name is Johnson.
Johnson.
All right. Good. And what will you be doing today?
We'll be riding the scout for the General Lee's pick.
Okay.
Will be,
Go ahead.
I have a dozen men with me.
All right. Well, let's-
Bracken, Johnson, Brackett, Bracken,
Okay.
Thomas, he's my lieutenant.
All right.
Thomas is a lieutenant.
Yes.
He'll ride point on we're pushing north.
All right. All right. Well, let's move ahead in
We
time.
have to skirt the army. The Union Army is ahead of us, and we are going to skirt it and bring back a report on troop strength. Troop.
All right. The Union Army's troop strength, right?
Yeah.
All right.
the ro-
Well, let's move forward a little ways into your day, and if something important happens, why, I want you to speak up and tell me about that. But you're rousing your men, you are all moving forward into this day. And if something really important happens, we will settle upon that on the count of 3. New impressions, number 1, number 2, and number 3.
And that was an eye-opener. Coming out of the cabin, seeing myself getting dressed in the morning and putting on the uniform of a Confederate soldier, a cavalry officer, and describing it in detail, it was something I couldn't even have thought of. I would here I'm being a Yankee. I'm from Western Pennsylvania. I mean,
Yeah.
in this life, and that was another time and another place. So
Yeah.
The descriptions I was giving, they're to be in that state is so real. The horse, I was fascinated with this horse called Thunder. That was my horse, and that was my pride and joy. I remember how I felt. I felt so good to see this thing again. And in this life, I had no concept of knowing about that. Although I've ridden horses all my life in Arizona, I loved riding, but this thing. But I never bought a horse. There was some reason I didn't want to own one again, and you'll find out as we go along why that happens in here. Because what happens next is you keep moving us ahead. That jumping, being able to move instantly on the timeline, and tell them why is that? Why is it when you're under hypnosis you can instantly be these places?
Well, it's you are creating the reality that the subject is experiencing. And that's the best way I can think of to explain it, because if you say, let's move forward 5 years, on the count of 3, you'll be there. Number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Right. And they're there. You're there. You're just instantly
just
5. And the reason that is there's no time on this other side where we're going.
Yeah.
Time doesn't exist. See, we're you and I are stuck in the moment. We can't go back and fix the audio glitch from instantly. We can't just go because we are moving along a timeline. That's why I called the show Timeline. And we're stuck on it. We're moving forward in this one direction. But when you go under hypnosis, all time stops.
Yes.
There's something to talk about is how much time, when you do these sessions, they can last for hours, and how long do the people think they're under?
It can be, they can feel that they're under for just 5 minutes,
right.
And they sometimes will think, if you don't give them a reference, why they could think you must have been doing that with me for hours.
Right.
So it can feel longer. or shorter.
Right.
But it will be whatever we tell them.
Yeah.
It will be. So,
I've had people. I had a guy who insisted he wasn't under hypnosis, and and that's I wanted to talk about that a little because he insisted he wasn't under, but I knew he was, and I said, well, when we finished with it, we'd done it, and I was with him for 2 hours. Right when we finished up, he said, well, I guess I ought to get going. He goes, what time is it? And I said, well, it's 8:00. He goes, 8:00? It can't be 8:00. We've only been here 15 minutes. I said, no, you've been under for 2 hours. And I said, I told you were under hypnosis. And he wouldn't, he was reliving. See, the problem he was having was he wasn't going into a past life. He was going into what is known as a parallel life.
Yes.
And so he's living something that is all happening on another plane of existence that's kind of mimicking what he went through in this life. Talk about that a little, about parallel lives. What are they?
Well, they are other lives. They are quite literally other lives, Randy, that our client is experiencing. If we send them into it, we've got to tell them that you're going to go into a parallel life, and it'll happen there again on the count of 3, number 1, number 2, and number 3. And they've changed places. They are in a new reality. And it can be a way to fully understand or better understand the situation that they're going through with you at the helm in hypnosis. But I mentioned that my wife Roberta and I are doing this book, and it's going to be the last 8 years. All of the new techniques that we have run into and we've started to use in one way or another in our practice. So my wife is a medium. In other words, she has the ability to see spirits, to see through the veil and see the dead if they happen to be around. I mean, she can be, in fact, it happened last night. She said, my God, Richard, I thought that was you standing in the doorway. And I was nowhere near the doorway, but she had seen somebody who was dead, who was also sharing our space in our house here in Phoenix, Arizona. So it can take many forms. I believe that we're all living about 3 lifetimes at the same time. Parallel lives is another parallel. Mm-hmm. Lives are another way to experience it.
Right.
My wife is a spirit guide to someone in Hong Kong, I know, at this time. And so we are multi-dimensional,
right,
to the degree that's just amazing to me. And now when I look at it, I'm trying to put it down. And Roberta, again, is helping me. But to put it into a new book filled with just a ton of techniques, mm-hmm. and so that other people can use it as well if they want to. Right.
Well, one of the listeners wrote in, Laura asked, she says, I seem to be living both in this lifetime and past and future lives, which we already just defined. That is happening all the time. Yeah. You have multiple things going on. How does she differ? I think she meant separate the different lives and decipher the message lessons I'm experiencing. Do you find this leakage from I've found that in people that they're not happy with what's going on in their life today. But they're seeing stuff of what they could be. They're actually getting glimpses of these parallel lives, is what I'm finding out. That because I take them and put them under, and that's what they're telling me about how they're a successful doctor or pilot or whatever they're doing, but they're not doing that in this life.
Yes.
What do you say to that? How can they separate those up and play the role they're here to play?
I explain the idea of parallel lives, and and try to go into it and really explain it. But, I sometimes say I get a subject and they say, well, I'm just not getting anything. And if I can't maneuver them, I usually can, and you can. But if I can't, I will say sometimes, well, I'd like you to just float for a while. I'm going to be perfectly quiet, but on the count of three again, or you're just going to float. And I remember doing this with a man probably my age at the time, and everything was fine. He was just floating around. And then I looked at him closely, and because he was sitting across the living room from me, and he was crying. And I asked him what was happening, and he says, I'm talking with my father. My father died years ago, and I'm talking with him for the first time since he crossed over.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that sort of thing that we have to make it up at the time.
Right. Well,
And
spirit comes in when it's going to come in. I've found that to be the case. And whatever's going to happen, the spirit is going to move them in that direction for what they need to see. It doesn't matter what you can be directing them to or trying to get them in, because they may have the reason we were doing the session like with me about the Civil War came up is I said I had this fascination. You asked me if I was fascinated with it. I said, well, I've always had fascination with that Civil War period. And I did, and so you kind of directed me in, well, if there's a Civil War era, we're going to go into that. And I went into it. That was the first time I was ever like directed, because when I was doing the things with Lucy, it was just she stuck the needles in. I just went wherever I was going to go on my own.
Yeah.
There was no direction. I was looking for answers to my connections to Kathy and that story that came out of it all. But these people in the, if you get that when their parents come in and these spirits, it's powerful. That's towards the end of. You do that before they come out of hypnosis. You always take them into the higher self. It's called. Talk about higher self. That's where your spirit guide comes in, or your relatives.
Yeah, the higher self is a level of mind that you have all knowledge, really. You should be able to, it isn't absolutely guaranteed that it'll work that way, but it's easy to move somebody up into the highest level of mind and tell them that you're going to perceive your entire existence. You will have awareness that you've never had before. And there again, count them into it, and they will be able to easily remember something that happened at a different time, maybe in the regression that you are conducting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. Maybe it's something related to that and it's more important. But I count them into higher self, and I often will put them in touch with their spirit guide. And the spirit guide is someone who's been with them their whole life. In other words, the spirit guide has been the little voice that has tried to keep them on the path that they have come to Earth to walk. Their spirit guide can be male or female, can be appear to them as older, middle-aged, younger.
Oh, I've had them be animals even. They come in the form of a wolf or an eagle. And that brings up another question. One of the friend of mine, Mike Kavrleski, asks, do we ever become fish or bugs or birds or animals, basically? And have you come across that much in your regression of them going back into a state of being an animal?
Let me explain this. I have, but it's a time It's a timeline
Mm-hmm.
that usually is the early days or the later days of Atlantis or Lemuria. And so there was a time when they were experimenting with form and shape, and I can remember a very powerful regression I was conducting one time in my office in Arizona here, and the woman was somebody that was just a date had brought her, and so she had no experience with this, and all of a sudden she started to really panic. She got scared. She says there's this man or fish. It's half fish and it's half man, and it's coming out of the water and it's coming toward me. And make it stop.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the times where I had to call in the spiritual police to stop it, because it seemed to me to be malevolent in the way it approached. It appeared very angry, and it was half man and half fish. And so that's the type of a situation where I've experienced it, and the person who is a subject, they're getting something they didn't plan on, and I am having to, now today I would handle it probably much more differently than I did in the early days, but
Right. Well, the whole thing.
Control.
Yeah, the when you touched on it there, the other Atlantis and all these other civilizations that people think are something out of a fairy tale, and they really aren't, because they're starting to discover them now. They're finding these ancient ruins on Earth that are predate. They're not even sure how old the pyramids are. They think the pyramids were there before the Egyptians, and I'm pretty sure they probably were, because they didn't build those hauling the blocks up there. There was something.
No.
There was other advanced civilization. I think this Earth has gone through so many changes that they have no clue, and it's all disappeared. It's been so many eons, and so
Exactly.
when you look at that, at the infinity of it all, and you start bringing it. Well, of course, we were probably. You may have been a bird or but you've evolved from that. Spiritually, you've moved up, because you have this spiritual growth, the spiritual growth that comes from each life you live. That the whole point of the karma is
absolutely
to grow spiritually, and so you move on to the next one, and so each time you're going to try to advance. You're not going to try to go back. Although I do have a dog that I think is a person, you know. She has you look at the dog going, who is that? I think I know this person. But let me play part 3 here, because this is where it gets interesting on the regression. This is when all hell breaks loose on the Civil War story.
Good.
It's late afternoon again. We've been riding for hours.
Yes.
So many Union troops around us. It's difficult to get through without being detected.
And yet you are getting through without being detected?
We are riding along this ridge.
Okay.
Cherokee Mountain, we've come up upon an old man in a cart on the side of the road.
Yes.
And his wagon is broken. There's a wheel off it,
and is
he's
this
with the South. We let him go.
all right?
We don't take anything. We're moving into the woods now because the troops are. The troops are up ahead, and he gave us that information to save us.
All right.
We move into the deep forest now.
All right.
Well,
Are you attaining the information you came here to find?
yes, he's helped us a bit. There's an entire company on the road heading this direction. We're hiding in the forest now, watching them move past.
Okay.
One of the horses moves and starts then. All hell is breaking loose now. It's the horses that are scared, they're firing.
All right, now you are 12 men.
Behind the trees, they're not hitting us.
How many men have you encountered? An entire company of men?
We've got to get out of this and fast.
And you are only 12 men
We're
against...
shot.
Yes. All right. Moving forward now, let's look at the outcome of the skirmish.
Sarah, the horses, they shot the horses, and now we're running. It's a mess. It's a bloody mess. They're firing everywhere.
Moving forward now to the outcome of this fight. On the count of 3, you'll be aware of what has happened. Number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Well, that was exciting, and I lost Dick. Are you still there with your audio? And I lost him here again. I don't know what happened, but we'll see if he comes back into us here. Anyhow, you can hear what happened in that firefight that opened up on us in the woods, and there you go. Dick's back here. Let me pull him back on here. So, yeah, Dick, the firefight in the woods, that was in it. It was so intense. I was in there, and I know you were trying to get information, but I just wanted to be there in that moment with my men, and we were shot to hell. It was bullets flying everywhere. Guys were down, and yeah, you're going to hear what happened out of that. But it was quite exciting to be in that. I'm in a room in Marina Del Rey Hotel in a chair, but yet I'm in North Carolina or somewhere in the Carolinas in the mountains in this firefight with these guys, and we get trounced there pretty badly. Let me bring up the next segment of this here, and see what happens after that. It gets really crazy here. Let me see if this is the same. Is this the same one here? Let me see if I lost track.
8 men down. And 4 of us are captured.
All right.
They've taken our sidearms and our weapons.
All right.
Now we're heading. I've hurt my hand.
Yes, your right hand.
So just a finger is bloody.
Yes. Were you shot? Or?
I had a graze on the finger is just dangling there.
Yes.
Very painful. They give me a rag to wrap around it.
Okay.
The other man is limping, and we're beaten pretty badly.
but 4 of you remain alive.
4.
And you are able to be mobile. They are marching you along with them. Is this correct?
We're tied together and we're walking.
Okay.
But our mounts are gone.
Yes. All right.
They've got my horse and I want it back.
Is your horse is okay?
Yeah, but they have it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move forward now to the next important thing that happens to you in this lifetime that we're now examining. So the next event of real importance, on the count of 3, number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Yeah. Well, I was so upset about the horse. I wanted that horse back, and I was mad. I remember walking behind him, tied up, my fingers dangling from me. A rag was wrapped around my hand, was shot, and another guy was shot. Was with us too. He was wounded. We were being dragged along, and that horse, some other officer got it, and was a Union officer riding my black my Thunder, and I was not happy. I remember the feeling that comes over you. I mean, to be in a session and actually have anger come over you, you know.
Yes.
I imagine you hear a lot of emotions come out of the sessions, right?
Boy, I do. I really do.
A lot of crying.
Yeah. I've had people, well, they are wanting to go into it. What happened? And oftentimes it'll be somebody, like battles, like what you were just experiencing there, Randy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've brought the people together. In other words, the guy my client, and he's upset, and he figures that he got his men killed in a battle like that. And so I'm trying to solve it for him and saying, it was war. That was a different set of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had Spirit come to me and say, it's, there's nothing to feel guilty about. Don't feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy is still just carrying on and on. And so I'll get the enemy, like if there were several men that they encountered in a battle of the one side, and then here's your side, and there's maybe the same general number of people together, and I bring them into the future, or into
mm-hmm.
their future right now, and have them explain. The person that they're feeling guilty about will explain, hey, there's nothing to feel guilty about.
Right.
We were fighting a battle, and that's what happened. And I've relieved a lot of guilt with that sort of thing. I had another situation where it was about a curse, and the person received a curse in a past life, and the curse had to do with the first female child in this particular family would never be able to have children and would have all sorts of other problems. And so I brought the person from the past who had put the curse on the woman, and then regressed her to be together with her face to face. And I mean, nobody was hating anybody. They had never, in their mind, they'd never met before. But the curse had put them together, and they'd been and that stuff is real,
mm-hmm.
as much as I hate to say it. And so the woman who laid out the curse, she's having to remove it, and she's feeling bad that that's the situation that she's in. And so by getting together with people and talking and being reasonable, you can move past things.
Yeah.
But I've had a lot of different things where it's a conflict between one or two, or maybe 10 or 20 people, and it's been solved by sitting and talking and going over it. And
Right. Now,
So-
Pete, do you work with anyone who has like PTSD and things like that are occurring now? Like they did, maybe they were in a war or some traumatic event happened to them, and do you work in any hypnosis sense with them in a current
Yeah.
life thing?
yeah, I have. I certainly have.
Because that always traces back to past lives too, and whether they realize
Yes.
it or not. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah, back to if it was started in a past life, it could very well be the carryover of the situation from the past life. And until they deal with it, what happened in the past, it's going to continue. So I've done a lot of that work.
Right. Well, that's what we're in this next segment. You're going to see what happened after the war, and then the final segment is that's when you take me. That's when you start to pull out what is wrong, because there were things buried in me I had no clue of until we did this session, and you pull it out of me at the very last section here. But in this section, we're going to talk about. You're going to hear talking about what happened after the war and how I moved up onto this mountain in Virginia here.
Okay.
I'm sitting on a porch now.
Yes.
I have a dog sitting next to me.
All right.
It's an old hound dog. It's funny.
All right.
A blue tick hound dog. It's my pet.
Okay.
I have it.
Are you back home at this time?
Yeah, I'm back home in Virginia. I'm on a mountaintop in Virginia, and it's
All right.
very peaceful again.
And is the war over? Or?
Yes, the war's. I'm home.
All right.
A lot of my friends are gone. They're
All right.
I have a great cabin on the top of this hill. It's just a beautiful summer day. Cicadas are buzzing in the distance. I can hear them
Okay.
humming away. They're just humming.
Well, tell me about your experiences with the war. Once you were captured, did you remain in a prison camp throughout the remainder of the war?
They took me north to it was near a river.
Yes.
Conditions were tight. We were bound together by our friendship, all these men.
Yes.
There was many injured. There were many injuries.
But you were provided with basic care, with food.
Scruffy. We had beards. We had no shaving.
Yes.
We had no bathing. It was filthy.
Yes. But you made it through. How long did you spend in the prison camp?
A year and a half.
Okay.
It was a year and a half in that hell. It was just hell.
What are you planning to do? Will you farm here on the top of the mountain, or will you do something else?
I'm not a farmer.
Okay.
I hunt with my dog. fish a lot.
So you can sustain
just
yourself.
Get by on your own.
Okay.
I have some tobacco, I know. I grow a little bit of tobacco for myself, I think. I like my pipe.
But there's no one else who lives here. Are there people who come by to visit?
No, I stay up here alone. It's a very lonely life up here, but that dog keeps me company.
I take it you are never able to get your horse back.
No, my horse is gone. I never saw it again.
All right. Well, let's move forward just a little ways further and see how you do, how you exist here on the mountaintop. So you're going to move.
Gone.
Your finger is
It's
gone. It was had to be amputated.
I grab it, everything with just my fingers. It takes get used to.
Yes. But you're able to sustain yourself.
Yes, I get by.
All right. Well, let's move forward and tell me the next incident that's important to you in some way. On the mountaintop. Moving forward now. Moving forward until something important happens in your life. Number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Yeah. So here it is after the war. I'm up on a mountaintop, isolated, and you don't know why. You're going to find out in the last segment what happened, and that's when it gets emotional. I mean, you draw out the emotions of why I've isolated myself on this mountain with no friends around, just a dog, what I want to talk about too at the end of this is how accurate this stuff is, because these things, if you listen to what I'm talking about when I was in there, I was using words I never would use. I kept calling the horses mounts, which was a cavalry, I guess, type of term, cavalry term, and I never, would call a horse a mount. And there were things, a picket, I was talking about, and General Lee's picket, and we were riding scout for it, and just terms that I just never really thought about. And what is going to get interesting at the very end is where I talk about where I am after the war and the event that's happening. And I did some research on this before we did this and found out that this event, I'm going to tell you at the end of it here what happens. So let's play this last segment here so we can move it along, and we'll close this out then here. Here we are at the last segment.
Wow, we're really old. These guys I rode with are there.
Okay.
2 of them.
Tell me
There's
about
only
it.
3. The 4th one died in prison.
Okay.
Of the 4 that were left, Thomas died.
And so have you had a form of reunion, the fact that they're there? Did they come to visit?
Yeah, we're together with others from our group. It's down in Louisiana somewhere.
All right.
We've all gotten together on it. We traveled many miles to get this group together.
All right. And what's it like? Tell me about it now. After all these years, you feel
crippled old men all together.
All right.
We're all complaining about aches and pains, but we're having a good time with each other again. It was one hell of a fight. We never gave up.
Right. I'd like to know, what was your desire on incarnating into this Civil War lifetime? And did you accomplish what you set out to accomplish?
It was a lifetime of leadership and loneliness, of being the one one in charge, and I isolated myself from everyone after that.
Why did you isolate yourself?
Because of the men I lost, I couldn't save them. I had to
Right.
stay away from everyone.
All right. Well, did you accomplish what you sought?
I accomplished it, but I lost so much I never got it back.
All right.
It's very emotional. All those men shot down for nothing. They were all my friends. The destruction was so bad.
Talk to me about the impact of the past life upon this life. What are you still carrying that you need to let go of?
I carry it inside of me, and it affects my physical being here.
Yes. You carry it inside you, it affects your physical being. And what do you need to do to let go of that, Randy? What do you need to do?
I need to know that this is just the role we're playing. We're not.
Yes. Now you know that this is the role that we're playing. You know it intellectually.
Let go of the guilt, Nessa. Let go of that.
Yes.
Just let it all out.
And can you forgive the enemy? Can you forgive the Union soldiers that did this to your men?
I would have done the same to them.
Yes, you would. Can you forgive yourself for being unable? For being unable to save your men?
I can let go of it. I can.
Good. This happened a long time ago. That was then. This is now. It's time to let go. It's time to let go of this.
And yes, it is time to let go. That's what I I use that term all the time. It's time to let go. In fact, I did a movie a couple years ago up here in Bend, a short film that we won first place for in the film festival up here, and it was called Past Time to Let Go. And it was about a guy going through a session like this, and it was a little 5-minute short film, but that is the key to it, letting go. And when you bring that, what you do in bringing this all forward is very healing.
Yes. Yeah, that's what people do not realize. It is so healing. And in fact, the regression is oftentimes the only way I would know to heal the problem. Randy, I mean, you have to go back and relive it, and you probably are going to have to forgive if a lot of it is anger that you still feel toward the people. That's why I was mentioning that that case where I'm writing about now.
Right.
I have about 5 different areas of anger where I've resolved the situation through bringing the people together.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting book. I know you've been working on it for quite a few years, but hey, mine took 10 years till I got it together, and you have a life to live too, So
that's right.
As you move along there, you'll get it. You will get it done. And time is irrelevant, isn't it? It's really
yes.
Time does. I always tell people, time doesn't matter. It will get done. Everything will happen. Yeah. You got to be you learn to be very patient with this. But hey, I wanted to pull up this I'm going to put up the thing on where you're going to be, because people are always asking where you're going to be next and how they get hold of you. And so Dick here is going to be, you can talk about 3-day professional hypnotist training in Lilydale, New York. Tell me about Lilydale. What is that?
Well, Lilydale is a town where everybody who lives there is a professional psychic or a medium.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's a whole little town, and it's one of several in this country where the people who live there have moved there, and other people can come to the town and go through the town and knock on doors, and they can have readings, or they can get help. So 3-day professional training.
Yeah, right.
In New York. Yeah,
The
and
7th,
that's
8th, and 9th, and then you have a 2-day advanced training after that. You're going to be busy for about 5 days there.
Yeah, exactly.
Beat you up. But it's a fun thing. I mean, because everyone there is interested in it, and I imagine quite a crowd shows up. Is this an it's certain points of the year they do this, but you can go there anytime, right?
Well, people are invited almost any time to come to Lilydale.
Uh-huh.
There's people putting on all different kinds of programs, and so anybody that wants to go there
right.
and explore it, it will become very clear how to find a place to stay and so on. So.
Yeah, and then you got in September you have this 2018 Afterlife Institute Symposium. What is that? That's in Scottsdale at the DoubleTree Resort. That's in your home, right in your home backyard. Yeah. That's nice.
That's right. That's nice. It's real nice.
Yeah.
It's like a seminar with a lot of people, a lot of people that do what you and I do, and so. I'm going to be doing, talking about afterlife. My wife will be doing that presentation with me. And
yeah, you've got a special setup there because you got a great wife who is doing work with you. So you work together on a lot of things now. We
do.
Where she can get at things that you might not with the regression, but she can tell you stuff, pull things out of people, and.
It's a perfect combination.
Like a tag team.
Yeah, it's kind of true, but it is a perfect combination as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
because Roberta can see through to the other side, and she can be talking with our clients' spirit guides,
right?
And I can be at the same time putting them down deeper and deeper. Down.
Right, and she has a direct connection to them there, and but hey, I want to thank you for coming on as a guest tonight, and it was great to see you. And I haven't yet to meet. I've seen Roberta now on the links, but I haven't even met your wife. God, I haven't seen you in 8 years, I think, since we did the sessions and
that's about it.
The training. But if you want to get hold of Dick, also, I mean, for private sessions, anything, go to his website because it's great. He has He has videos on there. I've been kind of cruising around in there reading different articles you're talking about in the advertising end of it, where they're using stuff to drive you into things and you don't even realize what's going on with you. But
exactly.
But go to his website, dicksutphin.com. You can buy. He has over 900 tapes you've done, which I have a bunch of them here myself that I play. That the music you heard in the regression, that's all stuff that he composed. You can get that, and but you can get sessions on anything. He has them already pre-recorded, so go on his site and check out that. And also, if you need to get hold of him for any private sessions, just give him a call. But thanks again, Dick, for
thank you, Randy.
Being my guest on here, and best of luck with the book, and I'm sure we'll be back together here again sometime.
I'm sorry, my dog came in with sound effects.
Oh, no, I had it muted. I didn't even, you know what, it never even came on to the live shot, because it only, that was just on me and you, so nobody out there actually heard the dog barking there.
Good. I figured it was a little appropriate, because you came back to talk about your dog. But,
right.
I'm glad.
Well, they are. They're somebody trapped in a dog body, I'm sure. They just, if we could I'd love to be able to do a regression session impression on an animal, but
Oh God! If you figure out how to do that,
yeah.
you let me know. Okay.
I will. Well, thanks again, Dick, and
thank you.
and good night from here from us. Okay.
Thank you very much, Randy.
All right. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, that was Dick Sutphin, everyone, and man, he has the stories to tell, and they're in his books. I mean, he's forgotten half of them, and he's done so many sessions, just like me. At a point, you start to forget some of the work you've done, but the key ones are always there. And anyhow, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in for this first show of Timeline, and we're going to be back again with more guests. I've got Bob Dodson, who's going to come on in one of these future shows, and I worked with him at NBC. He was one of the the storyteller correspondent to work with, and we did a cool story together, and he's going to talk about storytelling, because this is all about telling stories, and I want to have somebody in here who can give you some tips on how to tell a good story, how to even know a good story when you get one. So we're going to have Bob on in a future show, and plenty of other guests here, but for now, time to step back onto the timeline and go out and live your lives. So have a good day, everyone, and good night from here. Let me get my show close up here, and we'll see you next week.